So we start off seeing a guy on a bike at night. He parks his bike somewhere, goes to pick up an unconscious woman and loads her into a van. Now we see a weird woman undressing that unconscious woman in this completely white room. The weird woman then takes the unconscious lady's clothes and puts them on. She puts on every single clothing item that lady had on, bra and pantyhose included. Oh brother. She then stands over the unconscious woman and picks up an insect from her crotch area. What? Anyway, this lady, her name is Laura by the way, now heads outside to the van and drives off just as the motorcyclist also rides away. Laura heads to a mall to buy some clothes and makeup. Then she heads back to the van to put on the makeup. She's now driving around the city looking at different men, both young and old. This movie is set in Glasgow by the way, in case you're wondering why the car is a right-hand drive. A man catches her attention, so she pulls over and asks him for directions. She flirts with him a bit, but it ends there. She keeps going. Much later in the day, she stops and asks another man for directions. Nothing comes out of that. Then again, she asks another man for directions. As she asks these men for directions, she'll just randomly ask them some personal questions, mainly to check if they have a family or friends who would be concerned if they go missing, I guess. But she's a pretty woman, so these men don't suspect anything. And this third guy fits the profile. He lives alone and he's an electrician, so he doesn't really have colleagues. Perfect. So, she offers him a ride and he hops in, not even suspecting why a woman this fine is driving around the city in a van. After he has already got in the vehicle, he then asks. She says she's just helping her family move furniture. I know I'll never trust a beautiful lady driving a van, forgive my bias. Anyway, we now see her do that same routine another time, and she gets another guy to come with her. We now see as she takes this guy to this really dark place with her. She's undressing as she goes. So the guy takes the hint and starts undressing and following her. But then boom, he starts sinking while she's still walking. So, she's walking on water or what? Bro, that's all she does, and this guy just disappears. She now takes her blouse and heads back out. She's back on the streets in her van and you already know what she's out here doing. The next day, she's by the beach just watching a lad swim in the water. He comes out and she starts asking him questions. From the conversation, we find out that he's not even from Scotland. He's from the Czech Republic and he just came here to get away from it all. He now notices a couple struggling in the water and he rushes to help them. He manages to pull the man to shore, but he rushes back into the water to save his wife and they both drown. Oh, he's such a Romeo. You love to see it. Of course, not the death, the love. Anyway, the Czech guy just collapses by the sea and Laura comes, stands over him, strikes his head with a stone, and drags him to the van. By the way, the couple that just drowned left a little baby behind who is now crying, but Laura ignores him and just takes her victim. What a sicko. The motorcyclist also goes to the seaside later at night to retrieve the things the Czech guy left behind, and he too ignores the baby. My goodness, who are these monsters? Next, Laura parks her van somewhere, is trying to follow a man, but she turns around when she finds out that the place is too public, I guess. She tries to make her way back to the van, but a bunch of ladies show up and pretty much force her to join them. So she goes to the nightclub with them. Now, it seems like she's just trying to make her way out when this guy holds her back and starts talking to her. Oh brother, if only you knew what you're bringing upon yourself right now, and you won't believe this is the guy she had her eyes on when she first parked her van. The gods have given her this one on a platter. She asks her normal questions. If he's alone and all that, then boom, they hit the dance floor. While they're dancing, Laura whispers some things to him, and you can tell she wants them to get out of here. Then next thing, they're continuing their dancing in her dark room. The guy's shirt has already come off. She's now down to her underwear and walking teasingly backwards. So he strips completely and follows her eagerly, like the rest. He's sucked into the abyss. Also, like the rest, he has his eyes fixed on her the entire time, and doesn't seem to be struggling as he's disappearing into this weird place. But for the first time, we see what happens under there. He's just floating, but he can see her as she makes her way out above him. He's obviously confused, and his confusion is worsened when he sees another naked guy in front of him, the Czech guy from the beach. He reaches out to touch him, and when they make contact, the Czech guy's body just suddenly undergoes a very weird transformation, and he basically just crumbles into an, I don't know what to call this, but he eventually transforms into a weird substance which flows through a trough, and a bright light covers the screen. The next morning, Laura is in her van in traffic when a man in a Range Rover sends her a rose, which seems to have blood on it. It would appear that the man selling the roses had a cut on his palm. Shortly after, she listens to the radio as the reporter talks about the family that drowned at the beach yesterday. She shows no emotion to that. She just keeps moving, and she's back on her grind. She has managed to get another man to follow her home, and now, for the first time, we see what the outside of this building looks like, and I'm really wondering how these men still follow her there. You see a woman in a van, and she brings you to a building like this, and you follow her inside. Why Why do we men not fear for our lives? What's wrong with us lads? Next, we see Laura inside a dark building applying some lipstick while being examined by the motorcyclist. He examines her carefully, looks her dead in the eye, then he turns around to leave without saying a word. Laura hits the streets again, this time on foot, and maybe she should not be walking cause she trips and falls. Some men help her up and she continues on her way. She's just scanning through the city now, and she ends up in her van again later that night. She drives and stops on a lonely road and, as usual, she's just observing when a man walks up to her. Before she can fully wind down to hear what he's saying, a bunch of other guys jump on her van and she just drives away confused. She gets to a road where she sees a man with some type of deformity, and she does her normal routine, ask for directions, then offer to drop you off. It works again, the man climbs in, and they go off. She tries to engage him in conversation, and she finds out he's lonely. Her exact type, he has no friends, no girlfriend, and has never even had one. At least, both of us have something in common there. Laura now stops the van, and proper starts flirting with him. She takes his hand and touches her face, and then her neck, and boom. She tells him to follow her home. He pinches himself to be sure this is not just a dream. That's the exact same thing I do when a hot lady tries to flirt with me, to be fair. They get to the house, if you can call this place a house, and she takes him to the room, that room. She does her routine, strips and walks backwards, and the man follows her. This time, she goes completely naked as the man is sucked into the abyss. She then puts her clothes back on and heads for the door. Before she leaves, she notices her reflection in the mirror and examines herself for a few moments. I don't know what happened there, but it makes her turn back to rescue the man. Before driving away, she didn't even have the courtesy of handing him his clothes back. Now he's out in the bush, stark naked, trying to make his way home through a shortcut. And he does make his way home, but just as he's arriving, the motorcyclist, who had been in search of him since he noticed Laura released him, bundles him, puts him in the trunk of a car, and drives off. Now, we see Laura drive to the seaside. There's incredible fog ahead of her. She comes down from the van and just looks around for some time. Meanwhile, the motorcyclist now notices the mirror which she looked at in the building. Laura is now at a restaurant having some cake, and why does it look like she doesn't know how to eat? She even spits the cake out and walks out of the restaurant. She's walking now. It appears that she abandoned her van in the foggy highlands. She now takes a bus, and she just sits there looking lost. A man approaches her and offers her some help. She accepts his offer, and he gives her a jacket, takes her to a supermarket, and then takes her home. He entertains her with food and comedy on TV, but she's still looking lost. He plays some music on the radio while he's doing the dishes, and her fingers move a little, like she's feeling the music. He now takes her to her room and leaves her there, but she just stands close to the wall for a few moments. Then she goes naked and looks at herself in the mirror. She's now making some movements like she's just examining herself and learning about her body. We now cut to the motorcyclist, who now hits the road with 3 of his friends. I assume they're out in search of Laura. Laura, who is being treated like a princess by this knight in shining armor, carrying her over a puddle of water as they go to visit this place that looks like it used to be a castle. He also helps her climb down the stairs in the old building. Simp or gentleman, you decide. If you voted simp, well, in your face, because he gets his desired result. They are now back at the house and they start making out, and that eventually leads to slapping. No, he's not sucked into any liquid abyss. They actually have slapping time. Or wait, they don't. She just stops midway, takes the lamp, and begins to examine her crotch area. After she does that, she just stands up and looks out the window. Now, we see her running through the woods where she meets a lumberjack who tells her to be careful as she's out here. He asks her the same type of questions the old her would have asked. If she has been here before, if she's alone, all that stuff, but he lets her be and goes his way. Meanwhile, the motorcyclists are still in search of her. Laura now makes her way to a bothy. If you don't know what that is, well, it's this. A shelter available to be used by anyone for free in mountainous areas in Scotland. She goes inside and sleeps off. While she's sleeping, the lumberjack from earlier makes his way into the shelter and starts cupping a feel, so she wakes up, kicks him, and runs away. She runs to a truck carrying logs and hunks a couple of times, but she gets out and runs back into the forest when she sees the lumberjack approaching her. He chases her, catches up with her, tears her clothes, and tries to force himself on her, but he stops and runs away when he notices some black stuff coming out of her skin. She now slowly begins to tear her skin off to reveal a black creature. The lumberjack now comes back with some petrol and sets her on fire. Then we see the motorcyclist on top of a mountain, just looking around as smoke from Laura's body goes up and snowflakes come down, and that's how this very eerie movie, in which not many words were spoken, comes to an end. This entire journey just to get under her skin really got under my skin.